Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Get out of the Promoter 101.
I'm Lee Zeidman. I'm president of Staples Center Microsoft Theater LA Live, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Hey, it's good to see you. Welcome on back to Promoter 101. Sit a spell, take a load off, and we got some good stuff to share with you, boy.
That's right, we do, Dan. We've got the president of APA, the Agency for the Performing Arts, on this podcast. Later on, we're going to be joined by APA President Jim Gosnell, sitting down, talking about running one of the biggest full-service agencies in the business in a very special one-on-one interview with you, Dan. I'm looking forward to that.
You know, of all the major big six agencies full service, he runs the only one that he's the only guy that is a music guy that came from that side of the world. So super impressive to the music people to like really hear what he's got to say. Awesome, Jim Gosnell. Also, 3 questions with ToneDen's Tommy Knecht.
Let's start the show.
Hi, this is Nicole Carlson. I work with the Charity Network, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Hey, Connor, do you remember where you can listen to the podcast?
You can catch it on Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, YouTube, and on Promoter101.net.
I love that. It's like the old McDonald's commercials where they jump rope to shit.
It's very catchy. Let's get that going in song form for next week, Connor. Well done.
Dude, I could totally do that. That would be awesome.
If you've got something you want to share with us, just email us at steiny@promoter101.net. We are happy to respond to you, or at least we're going to pretend like we are.
If you'd rather hit up us on social media and do that publicly, we're more than welcome to take criticism there as well, too. I'm on Twitter at WLuke Pierce, Dan's at The Jew. The show is Promoter 101.
You can also catch us on Instagram at Steiny Promoter 101. Luke is W. Luke Pierce, and I am Dan Presents.
Of course, we're over on Facebook. Who's not? They're watching you everywhere, Dan. We're on Facebook at Promoter 101.
Same thing on Tumblr.
And on the World Wide Web at www.promoter101.com. Plus, Dan, did you know that we're on LinkedIn? If you're looking for a new opportunity in your professional career or just want some news about your industry, check us out where all the cool kids go. LinkedIn.
I'm not really sure that's where the cool kids go.
Dan, I'm sure it's where the cool kids are. It's where I spend most of my day.
Hey, it's Johnny Schumann from AEG Presents, and you're tuned in to Promoter 101.
Dan, my favorite time of the week because we get to name drop a bunch of amazing people for some birthdays. The week of May 14th to the 20th, 2019.
Tuesday, May 14th, Landon Gala George, the punk rock king, Adam Parsons, manager extraordinaire, Dave Fox, and Claudine Britt.
On Wednesday, the 15th, wishing a happy birthday to Paradigm's Todd Walker.
The sweater vest himself, yes.
The man in Boston, man. Love it.
Boston Todd. Thursday, the 16th of May, Luke Cahill, Mark Denby, Lisa Martin Roberts, Elizabeth Rush, Jake Kennedy, and Bart Dahl.
On Friday the 17th, we're wishing a happy birthday to Mads Murphy.
Saturday the 18th, Braden Roundtree. Gotta love that guy.
He's really good, people. On Sunday the 19th, wishing a happy birthday to Charlie Goldstone, Chris Moore, Paradigm's Clint Wiley, and Live Nation's Greg Siegel.
Greg Siegel posted one of the most dark graphics on my birthday on my page with like a coffin. It caught me off guard. Of all of the things I saw that day, that was one of the funniest things. It was just like, it was dark and kind of awesome. Very Greg Siegel of him. Monday, 5/20, Melissa Adair. Happy birthday.
Wonderful wishes to everybody this week. Your friends at Promoter 101.
Hey, this is Chris Tatzelli from 7S Management, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Kicking off the podcast, we are joined by one of the team members of one of the more exciting tech platforms in the live world from ToneDen. Joining us for 3 questions is Tommy Knecht.
Tommy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dan. Happy to be here. So, question 1, if you're ousted from the music business altogether, what would you not only go do for a living, but what do you think you would be good at?
I don't think I could personally do anything else. I don't think you can get ousted from the music industry. It's amazing, like, how many shady people are still in this business, no matter how many people they've fucked over, and they're still working in this business. Those people are still in this goddamn business. So I think I've got a pretty good chance of having a job for a while since, like, I've actually put my best foot forward and not trying to fuck anybody. So hopefully I don't get outs, but I literally think all of these, because you all know, like, a couple people are popping to mind. Like, how the fuck are they still in this business? Man, I wanted to do a segment of people that suck on the podcast, but, like, I realized how quickly we get sued, especially because those people suck. They definitely sue me. So I'd love to do a special segment and name names, but I think that would cost me. Anyway, what's your next question?
Okay. What do you see as being the biggest change in the music and touring business in the next 10 years?
I think the biggest change in music myself in touring will be that people will actually still go to shows because they have to. And as much as the VR is existing now and all the technology exists, the whole idea of that group mentality of being in a environment with live music all together and being able to dance around the fire while the band plays is so tribal. And I think that still matters. That's what connects us, is that spirit of being in the room. It's still at the core of it all. Although some of us are getting a better VIP experience and better seat for a little bit more money.
More money, more shows.
Probably. Traffic will continue to get insane. Like 28th hold place today. It's like, Jesus, really? 27X think they're going to fight it out for this date?
All right. My last one is going to be marketing related, just because that's what we focus on over here at ToneDen. So which of the marketing channels have you seen the biggest shift in usage over the last 5 to 10 years? And where do you see that going?
If you're going to take it to 10 years, clearly print used to be a part of our daily cycle, man. Like breaking an ad and making sure that print ad was in. And are we going to run a full color ad and like 4-color process? Oh my God. Like how cool is that with full page, full color? Like you're the cat's pajamas in the weekly if you could do that. And now it's just like, if you put print in your ad plan, you're going to get a phone call from the agency's marketing department, and they're going to give you a very hard time about that, unless maybe it's a heritage act and you're going after the daily. But for the most part, I think we've lost print. So over the 10-year cycle, I think that was just a huge fucking staple that just doesn't even exist anymore. And you've seen those weeklies go from being like 64 pages down to like 16, which is pretty massive shrinkage. And then a lot of them have gone from being a weekly to being a bi-weekly, and some of them have just disappeared completely. So I think that's a huge impact that we've seen over the last 10 years. Over the next 10 years, it's just going to get easier and more digitally connected. You see it with your phone now. It's just like how the shows get announced. And I think you're going to find more creative ways to connect with the fan. And that's going to be the thing. Your phone is connected through the app, is connected through the musical service that we're streaming, and you get the notice that, okay, you're listening to this. Do you want to buy a ticket? And click twice on your phone and you've suddenly got third row seats. How genius will that be when technology catches up to that? But it's got to be coming, right?
For sure.
At least it seems like that's where technology is going. It's like, I couldn't write that algorithm to save my life. But people like Alex White that are smart like that, and David Marcus, and all the geniuses that know technology and can figure out, okay, that's identified that's where we're going, how we get there. And then the big companies will make the investments and we'll be there. And we'll sell more tickets because of it.
Absolutely. For sure.
Well, thank you so much for being on, Tommy. I couldn't thank you enough for taking time out of your day and playing 3 questions with us on Promoter 101.
Thanks so much, Dan. I hope we can catch up soon.
So great to have Tommy on Promoter 101 playing 3 questions. God, I love this game.
This is Francois Baptiste with 3D Productions. I'm on Promoter 101.
It's time for the unveiling of the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Who we got?
This week, it's a true icon, a man about town, a legend, one of the greatest promoters of all time. I'm talking about AEG Rocky Mountain's own fearless leader, the great one, Chuck Morris. What he has built in Denver is so impressive, and he's just a full-blown icon, making him this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
Congrats. Well-deserved to one of the biggest legends, the Rockies.
Hello, my name's Jane Bees. I'm the head of music at the Roundhouse, and I'm here on Promoter 101.
In our featured interview this week, we've got a great one-on-one sit-down with the president of the Agency Performing Arts, that's APA. Jim Gosnell is here to sit down to talk to Dan about running a full-service agency in this very, very special interview. Check it out.
Jim Gosnell, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You are the only head of a major agency that has all the film and TV and branding and music that comes from the music background. So with that in mind, the things that you oversee, the film, the TV, the branding, it takes up so much time. It's just like, is there any one given thing that you're spending more time doing these days than another?
Well, I think managing people is the hardest thing in the world. I love all areas of the business we're in. I don't particularly favor one over the other. I like to say, they're all my children and I think they're all important, and one really feeds into the other at some point. At least you hope you'll connect the dots that way. So, yeah, I just, you hire good people and you turn them loose and let them do their job.
APA has been a powerhouse in the film and TV and packaging department for years. And music-wise, you guys early on, back to Tom Ross's assistant days, were a mega music agency. But in the last 5 years or so, Steve Martin, Andy Summers, Bruce Solar, Guy Richards, list kind of goes on for days. You guys infused yourself with some serious power players and have really become super active in all parts of music.
Well, I think you try to hire like-minded people. I wanted to work with Bruce Solar for many, many years, and I just felt that no matter how hard I tried, I just didn't see it happening for whatever those reasons were, timing or whatever. But I got to know Steve Martin from a simple cold call. We had lunch, and I realized that I had more in common with Steve Martin than a lot of my contemporaries out there. We were so like-minded on so many different areas of the business. It was an easy fit. And when Steve decided to come over, then Andy and Bruce, who were disgruntled on where they thought their company was going, thought this would be a good fit. And I'd known Andy for a long time as well, but really got to know Steve, and we gelled really well.
Steve, Andy, Guy, Bruce, Vale, a bunch of them came over, and obviously Noel had already been there, Jamie had already been there. A bunch of those people in that hallway already knew each other, so it was something of a reunion.
Yeah, well, we had brought over Andrew Ellis prior to that. With that, Jason Parent and Greg Horrible came over later on. Didn't come from the agency group, certainly, but yeah, from Paradigm. And Jason had his own business, and Greg had his own business, and I always find that fascinating when a young guy starts his own business, and, we convince him to come work with us. And Christiane Weiss, way back when, was at ICM. Craig Newman was an assistant at William Morris and then came over to us and worked with Josh, and Josh Humiston is doing a great job. So, yeah, Keith Nesbitt had worked for William Morris, worked at APA, then was at ICM for a while, then agency group, and finally came home to APA again. So it's a great collection of people.
It really is Killer's Row when you walk down that row there in New York, in Nashville. It's an incredible thing. And even the guys that are booking the international stuff, it's just like you look at AJ Paul and you look at Keith Nesbitt, and the business they're doing is incredible.
Yeah, around the world. I mean, setting tours in Russia, and Ukraine and places like that. Yeah, AJ has been just terrific. But again, homegrown, started as an assistant in APA and worked his way up under Keith Nesbitt. And then, sort of blossomed on his own after that. And then, we've got Leora, who's doing a great job for us, and Casey in Nashville in the international department. So I'm glad you're bringing this up, because sometimes I forget where all the dots were connected and how people got to APA. So,
all right, everybody. So when you get your raises in a couple of days, remember, I was the one that stirred it up. You mentioned Andrew and Jason and Greg. Let's go to that, because Andy and Bruce are cool. They book some legendary cool acts, Social Distortion, Cake. You can't talk alternative music without talking about those guys' rosters. But cool, hip, young, happening stuff. Greg, Jason, and Andrew, they're on the cutting edge of what's happening in the ballrooms around the country and blowing up into the arenas.
Yeah, and that was by design. When I first met Andrew, I had heard about him, and I actually had lunch with him in New York, and, I show up in the booth, and, there's Andrew sitting in the booth already, but, show up at this great restaurant. There's Andrew with the baseball hat and the whole look, and I'm going, God, am I going to have anything in common with him? And within 30 seconds, I realized I really like this guy. He's really smart, probably one of the best agents out there, very meticulous about all his deals and how he does things, and very well thought out. And it's a real honor to work with him. But he had a game plan about, let's add a couple of, these younger guys that own their own businesses. Therefore, they're more dedicated to what they're doing. They've been able to somehow eke out a living, and therefore bringing them into an agency fold, we will be able to expand their knowledge on what's going on and how to make better deals and, I could be the guy at the end of the hall that's going to answer those questions when they're just having a tough time on certain issues. So there's a lot of senior management there that is working with their younger agents, and I think that's why our younger agents are starting to take off.
Entrepreneurial spirit's got to be something you're talking about when you're talking about bringing in guys that have their own agencies. They see something different. You can train someone to be an agent, be an assistant, be on someone's desk, understand the process. And not to say that one way is better than another, because the mailroom certainly teaches you a lot in coming up as an assistant, being on someone's desk, especially if you're lucky enough to be on Craig Newman or Guy Richards or Andy Summers' desk. You're going to learn it right. But to start your own business and learn all those things and succeed that way and have to do, the printer breaks down, you got to figure out how to get it fixed. Like anything that pops up, it doesn't get done unless you do it yourself. So those pieces have to be pretty awesome when you're looking at guys like that.
It is. And I'm amazed at, some of the questions they have. And because don't forget, they're working in a vacuum. They have nobody to walk down the end of the hall and see and pick their brain on how would you structure this deal? How would you do this? How could I do it better? What am I not seeing in this particular offer? What should I be looking for? What you're really looking for in anybody that wants to be an agent, if they have these ingredients, if they have hustle, common sense, passion, character, boy, that's a big one left out these days, character, and just overall, it's not just knowledge of the business, but I'll go back to the passion part, but really passionate about what they're doing. If they have those ingredients, you can make a good agent, but if they're lacking one of them, they're not going to make it. And I've seen that many times that you think, oh, well, maybe this guy has it. They got to have it all. If they don't have that and they're missing one of those ingredients, it's a very difficult job for them to do, and they're not going to be any good at it. You got to really love what you're doing, and you got to be passionate about it. And if you're not, it's not going to work. Go get a job. Maybe you should be in another aspect of the business, right? Maybe you should be working in a label. Maybe you should be working in management. Maybe you should be, because I have often thought that there's a completely different gear in an agent than there is in a manager.
Yeah, it's always an interesting thing to see the difference between a good manager and a bad manager, too, which I guess is probably something you're always evaluating as a good agent and a bad agent, especially if you're looking at hiring or buying someone.
Yeah, I mean, people have said, what makes a good agent is the guy that brings in the most money. And I've said, no, it's the guy that can fix the problems the best and the fastest. Can he deal with problems? Because what we're doing is problem solving all day long. Yeah, we're setting up tours, we're negotiating deals, but in that ecosystem of all of that, you're dealing with problems. And who can solve those problems and who's going to attack them in a way that everybody's going to walk away going, oh, that was a good result, both for the artist, for the promoter, for the agency, for the management company, for everybody. That's a delicate balance, and I think that it's sort of a forgotten art.
So you guys recently acquired a good part of the UTA team in Canada. I guess you hired them. It wasn't an acquisition, but you moved quickly on that. The second that opened up, you guys were in there.
So, I think it was within hours.
But moving fast like that's not something you normally see big corporations do, and you guys are a pretty big corporation at this point.
Yeah, Steve had been talking about Ralph and Jack for years. And I hadn't had the pleasure of meeting them. And when the opportunity presented itself, I got on a plane right away with Steve Martin. We flew up there. And sitting down with Jack Ross and Ralph James, I realized that, they were everything that Steve was talking about, and Bruce and Andy as well. But even more than that, I said, why haven't I worked with these people before? They're terrific. And again, like-minded about the business, like-minded about how you go about structuring your business and how you feel about dealing with talent. So we got along on all of those levels. I think by the end of the meeting, I was just like, okay, let's just wrap this up. Let's make this deal. A lot of the businesses that the company's got in that way, it's been similar. I don't weigh things out on a spreadsheet, and maybe you should at times, but I look at it a little bit differently. And most of the time, when you're taking those meetings, whether it was Steve Martin or Andrew Ellis or, anybody you're hiring into your organization, I always go to the first place. Do I want to be in a meeting with these people? Do I feel they're going to be additive to a meeting? And if we're trying to sign somebody and I throw them the football, are they going to score a touchdown for me? Or are they going to get me 10 yards? Are they going to get me closer to the goal? It's a people business, and you can't forget that. That's how I make my decisions.
We've known each other for about 20 years now. I've gone from buying a show or two a year from your company to doing a countless number of shows. I would imagine it's 25-30% of our business is probably with your agency. To see the buildup over time, to see how you guys handle things and the way you guys interact across the board, everything has the same tone to it. It's never about this was in the contract. It's always about the spirit of the deal. If there's a problem, doesn't matter what's in writing, it was what we talked about. and it always gets worked out. It always comes down to what's the right thing for the show, what's the right thing for the artist, and you guys always talk it through. But it seems to be a streamlined conversation all the way through, that any problem we have gets worked out. I can always find Craig Newman be a Sunday. I can always call Andy Summers at 10 o'clock at night if there's a problem with his act. I can always pick up the phone and, get any of these guys on the phone. Guy Richards never stops working. I think he
won't take a vacation. I
think
can't
he
get
has
him
a cell
to take
phone
one.
next to him while he sleeps.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that when it's, okay, we want to pick up another 10% or 20% of dates on this act, we feel very comfortable knowing that our relationship with the agency has grown so organically, because we know that you guys aren't looking to get an extra $200 out of the date. It's how can we set it up for the next play? How can we set it up for the next play? And in some cases, it's like, great, we're on the 10th replay of an act. There's an amazing future into the concept of let's not, skin the cat. Let's shear it.
Listen, I think that's very well put. I'd like to be doing 70% of your business. That would be great. But, I think you're dead on, Dan. Our philosophy has always been, it's about the artist. What is the right thing for the artist? You're dealing with people and money, and occasionally you're going to run into problems that maybe are not reflected in the contract or pop up at the last minute. The way I was brought up in this business, you fix the problem. No matter what you do, you keep the train on the track. You keep it on the track for the artist. And there isn't an artist that wants to get to a show and experience any kind of a surprise. So you try to take that out of the mix right away. You sometimes have to take ownership in the problem, and you just deal with it, and then we'll all work it out on Monday, or we'll work it out on Tuesday. But, I'm a big believer in, if you tell somebody you're going to do something, maybe it isn't reflected in the paperwork for whatever that reason is, but you got to do it. And if an agent comes into my office and said, hey, I missed this, or this is happening and we didn't anticipate this popping up, I go, okay, let's just fix it. It starts from the top. If you start screaming at people about problems, then they're going to be afraid to come into your office and talk to you about problems. And I've always said, I'm Switzerland. You come in, you tell me your problems, because you couldn't possibly fuck this up any more than I have. Okay? And when you say that to a young agent or any agent, it right away it just lowers the temperature of the problem, and they go, okay, how would you fix this? And the great thing is, with Andy and Bruce and Josh and all the experience we got at the company, and Andrew, and I could go on, we know how to fix problems, and we know that we're going to have problems occasionally, but I'm a big believer in your word is your handshake. That's another forgotten thing. I learned that from Roger Vors, who, God rest his soul, he died last year, was one of the original founders of APA. And he told me early on in my career, he said, you give somebody your handshake, whether the contract gets there or not, you're living up to that. That was a big understanding that we always had with the Nederlanders, for instance. Nederlanders were very, very helpful to the creation of APA in 1962. But we've always had sort of that kind of mentality, not only with them, but with other people. But, I think that's the way to do business. Sometimes you get bitten in the ass, but for the most part, it works out. But again, it's always in the protection of the artist, protect and serve. I think it's on the side of an LA police car. We try to live up to that, and you're going to have problems. And so, we'll solve it this way this time, and next time it'll roll your way. And, we, again, keep the train on the track, keep the artist happy, and just make sure that they're not dealing with the problems. That's your job to deal with them. And so when they get to the engagement, the gig, the concert, the arena, the stadium, whatever, it's all worked out prior.
Internationally booking around the world now. You guys are a global company.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be that America and Canada were one system for the most part, and the rest of the world booked out of Europe was a separate system. You traded the bands back and forth, but there were no real American agencies booking over there for the most part. And then something changed. My guess is Neil opened shop in America and kind of broke the wall down between booking globally, and everybody else kind of woke up to, I guess there's no written rule that says you couldn't, and everything kind of changed. But now William Morris, CAA, clearly Paradigm has made their international move with their acquisitions. You guys are booking internationally. ICM has an international department. America has landed in the UK and is going global. As far as being a full service agency now, do you need to be able to book globally?
Yes, I think you have to. I think that you can't wear the carpet out in North America. And I think to coordinate things properly, I think you need to be there. Now, various agencies will say, well, you really don't know the market in Europe and you don't know this and you don't know that. Well, it's not that difficult to figure out. It really isn't. And I think that, obviously the internet has solved a lot of our problems.
It doesn't help that Keith was born there.
Yeah, and the fact that Keith is from London. But even more than that, it's just a different business today. And people are more open to knowing that they're going to deal with you a day later, or the email may come a little bit. It's not as instantaneous, but that you're going to get to them within hours. And I think that, it all works. I remember, we represented Fleetwood Mac, and I was talking to the promoter over there and went back and sat down with Troy Blakely because he was the RA at the time when we worked with him. I said, I think there's an offer to play Australia. And he goes, well, yeah, but I've never booked Australia. I said, hey, there's a building, there's a town, there's a capacity, and there's a ticket price. It's not that hard. Once you find out the taxes, you can deal with it.
Hire an immigration lawyer.
Yeah, and I've done it. And so none of this is rocket science. You got to dive in and ask the right questions and get the right answers and make sure that, you know your geography and know the people you're dealing with. So it's not impossible.
Being a full service agency seems to be a really big deal. An incredibly expensive thing to set up a full service agency. I think Paradigm's probably the only one that's come online in the last handful of years that went full service from being on one side of the business to growing into it. You really have to be well capitalized and grow into it. You guys have been a company for decades and grew into it organically. But what advantages does an artist have to sign with an agency that does have full service available to them?
Well, I think that, it also has to be an artist that wants to utilize those services. A lot of people think, oh, I want to do a soundtrack. Well, when you realize how much work is involved in doing that soundtrack, you may not want to do it. And it takes and you have to have a different head. You can play songs in a soundtrack, but you can't, in order to be the music supervisor for a particular movie or something, that's a whole other head.
Because you have to take notes from a producer of what the vibe and stuff, right?
Think about this. You got to be able to move the scene through music. If you just visualize that for a second, the music I'm writing has to elevate this scene. That's a whole different level.
Right.
And you either got the head for it or you don't. So
not everybody's Mark Knopfler where they can take Princess Bride and do what he did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, that's a specialty. Being a full service agency helps you as far as knowledge of what's out there in reality television, what's out there in the scripted feature world, what's out there in television. And now with the explosion of television these days, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, all of those platforms, the game's changed. So a couple of artists of late, and I'm very proud of what we do with Mary J. Blige, nominated for Academy Award for Mudbound, just finished Umbrella Academy, which was on Netflix, and now has a couple movies teed up, also a possible television series, and still touring. I mean, she's going on a big tour.
Year, right?
Yeah, she's out on a big tour this summer. And then Curtis Jackson, 50 Cent, how his career has taken off, not only as an actor, but as a producer through the roof. This guy has got a show on ABC. He's behind the scenes producing a lot of this. So we've been able to take his career to a whole other level as a producer.
I'm addicted to Power. It's amazing.
Yeah, and there are going to be spinoffs of Power and things like that. So knowing how to do that and understanding the mechanics of those deals, you got to be at a full service agency and also have the time to do it. There's a lot of full service agencies out there, and people will go to some of our competitors, but are they really going to spend the time doing it? They may put 20 people in a conference room, but are they going to really deliver on it? And that's really where the rubber meets the road.
Now you have these influencers, multimedia, whole new world where it's like people are playing video games and selling out arenas. People are coming to watch people play video games and selling out arenas, esports. And now you've got these Instagram stars, these influencers that can take a YouTube thing and going to millions upon millions of views and bringing that on the road, and people are paying a fortune to meet them, and they're doing these live shows. The closest we ever got to that was comedy, right? But this is 20 steps further beyond. It's like, did you ever envision that there'd be more of that stuff that was going to go in these new directions?
No, but I've said before that the umbrella of entertainment is a circus tent. It really has turned into that. And what the YouTubers have done, influencers, have basically created fans out there. And where fans are, they want to go see the people that they're fans of. And there's a market for that. And you just have to figure out how to do it and with who and how are you going to build that up and how are you going to maintain that in a way that, they could go out again and have a real career. I've often said, what does every first president want? A second term, right? They want a second bite at the apple. So if you do it correctly, you continue to build it. How about people that have podcasts? are out there doing live dates.
Oh, is there a business in this?
Yeah. You could be working here. Anyway, there is. And I think that, we're seeing actors of a certain level love to do that question and answer thing, basically getting a backstage pass to their career. All of that has value and people want to see it. People want to experience different things. So I don't think it's, as you would point out, it's not just music and comedy anymore. People will buy a ticket to see something that they're a fan of and is unique to them. And yet, these are things that you and I might not be aware of. And I'm always amazed at somebody coming into my office going, what do you think of so-and-so? And you're dumbfounded. You go, well, what do they do? Oh, well, they've got this cooking show and blah, 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 and got this many likes. And, I think we should try this or try that. And I go, okay, let's try it. I just think you have to be aware. Obviously, a full-service agency, you would be if you've got a reality show. And how can you take a reality star, put them on the road? You can figure all those things out. So you have the mechanics from the other areas of the business, especially on the live thing, and you have the connection, let's say if it's smaller venues in the performing arts or clubs. So you've already got the infrastructure to support all that and take those shots. And I'm always amazed at where it ends up.
What's the goal for APA for the future?
The goal for APA is to realize first and foremost that we represent talent. We should never get away from that. We're not a media company. Several companies out there who remain nameless morphed into media companies. That's their choice. I still think there's a huge business in representing people, doing it on a level that they're getting the service that they want. It's not about falling in love with the initials on the script cover. It's about who's actually doing the work. And can you maintain and continue, not only maintain, but grow their career? And so the vision would be, if everybody else wants to be General Motors, I want to be Ferrari. Ferrari doesn't need to sell as many cars, but the cars that they do sell are very valuable and they're what people want. I've always been a fan of that mentality. Ferrari doesn't spend a dime on advertising. What does Mercedes-Benz spend? And Ferrari's attitude is we don't have to when you build the best. So it's always about aiming towards that. It's not trying to be the biggest. It's really trying to be the best in service and trying to continually grow our business. We've grown various platforms that if you had asked me, gee, would you be in this business 8 years ago or 10 years ago? I would have said, what are you talking about? I mean, it's not something I'm interested, whether it's physical production. We represent most of, if not all, the film editors on all the Marvel movies. People go, how'd you get in that business?
Is there money in that?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Not only that, they're just, they're very, very talented and represent a lot of producers, and we represent just a lot of below the line. We got into that business.
Can you explain that for our listeners, since
Sure.
film and TV isn't really a big part of the music side? Below the line, above the line. Can you explain
Sure.
that term?
Okay, well, above the line is talent, is your director, and any talent that's associated with it. You, the Bruce Willis or whoever the actor is in it. Below the line is that long list of people that are right after the talent that you go, who are all these people
You're talking
working
about
on
like
this
on
movie?
the credit, but they didn't make the
On the
poster.
credit. They're not above the line, they're below the line. But you can't make a movie without them. You can't make a movie, an action movie without special effects. Or maybe it's your DP. Maybe it's a producer who's involved in the movie. Maybe it's a costume designer.
Awesome.
That's a
Thank
huge
you.
business. And what happens is, both in television and film, it's a very important part of the business. And these people are specialists in what they do. And we got in that business probably 3.5 years ago. And we represent 900 clients in that area now. So the film editors on Avatar are all our clients, and they're booked for the next 4 or 5 years because he's shooting 3 Avatars in a row.
No, they're doing more of this.
Yeah, well, we also have the film editor for Top Gun. So, I mean, it's just another business we're in.
So the word sequel's a good word in your
Yes,
world.
the word sequel and the word $200 million movie is a good business. So,
Good on you.
Yeah, it's good. We also represent studios in various places throughout the world. If you think about it, a studio is like a venue. It'd be like the Greek theater. Who's going to bring the business in to these 4 walls and a roof? And who's going to negotiate those deals? So we've gotten into other businesses and looked at it a little bit differently. It's very additive to the physical production area.
So you're an IRA for not only musical acts, but you have film clients that you personally oversee too.
I used to run the talent department many years ago, but there aren't people that I would say I'm involved with, but I'm not directly their day-to-day person. I only handle a few music people, but I'm involved in other aspects of our
But
company.
you're running the agency.
Yeah, I'm running the agency.
Which is a full thing. And we skipped into the business. Let's go back to how you got in the business and how we got here.
Well, that's somebody else asked me that a while ago. I think it all started in February of 1964, coming back from a Boy Scout trip and laying on the floor and turning on the Ed Sullivan Show and seeing the Beatles. I think that was, somebody said, what was the moment I just was blown away. And I said, I got to be a musician. And everybody on the block played guitar. And I thought, God, I'll never get in a band because everybody's playing guitar. I'll beg my parents to buy me a bass, and I'll play bass because nobody was playing bass. And then, my parents didn't have any money, and I didn't want to ask them. And my friend down the street was taking guitar lessons. So after he took the lesson, I go down with my bass, and he'd show me the notes and show me what he learned. And he would teach me how to play bass as much as he could, just taking guitar lessons. And then I had another guy who was up the street who was an older guy, and I would beg him to let me use his amp, and he would let me borrow it. And then we had a little band. And then I was the business guy that would try to get the other $25 out of the nuns at Catholic school dances. So, it just happened that way. And
what was the name of your first band?
Called The Setbacks.
Yeah, I like that.
Tom's River, New Jersey, The Setbacks, yeah. And, I just loved it. I didn't really care if we played a gig. I just liked playing. But then somebody had to take the bull by the horns and try to get dances and whatever. And, we started 7th grade, 8th grade. And by 9th grade, other high schools were calling us to play. And they would always call me. And, we'd get $100 a night or $125 a night. And then you're a freshman in high school. What do you do with a check? Most schools, they wouldn't give you cash. They give you a check. So my cousin's grandmother owned a bar, Olson's Bar on Route 37. So my father would drive me there, and I called her my grandmother as well, but she wasn't actually my grandmother. And I would say, Grandma, I got another check. Can you cash? And she'd cash it for me, and then I could pay everybody. So, I was that guy in the band, not the most talented, but the guy that was able to keep things organized, keep everybody working.
You were an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Came to a point, where the band was playing all around, and then told my parents I'm quitting college and I'm going on the road with a band. And my father practically wanted to strangle me at the dining room table. And he said, you'll never make any money playing that ukulele. I said, Dad, it's a bass guitar. It's not a ukulele. And he said, well, if you get in trouble out there, don't come to me and, all that. But we always made money. We always figured it out. But I was the one dealing with the manager and the agent. After a couple of years, we were on the road all over the place. Finally came back to New Jersey and fired the manager and the agent. And I got in the car and booked the band up and down the Jersey coast for a lot more money than we were getting and split it evenly between everybody. I didn't even know to take a commission or anything, and got involved with this other manager. And we got a demo deal with United Artists, and we went in the studio. And I think it was at that moment where I just realized that my friends from kindergarten and grade school, that we went on the road together, that it was just time. And I felt that if we weren't going to play original music and really take a shot at it, then, I don't want to do it. And we had a couple of, guys that left the band. I went to Southside Johnny, Ed Mannion, and Tony Palagrosi, two really, really good musicians. And I just, after a while, I just said, okay, I'm not going to make it with these guys. I think I'm pretty good, but pretty good's not going to get it. And somebody said, I think you'd make a great agent. And a gentleman bought the small agency in New York on 1650 Broadway. And he called me up and he said, hey, I heard the band broke up. I'll give you $100 a week. And you could work as an agent. And so I didn't have to start as an assistant because I couldn't type. So I took the bus from Toms River, New Jersey, each way every day, hour and a half for $100 a week, and worked at 1650 Broadway, and that was called Mecca Artist. Started there, and we had a very eclectic, more of an urban roster, everybody from Blue Magic to Eddie Kendricks to, on and on and on. But then we got lucky. And we got in business with a live management, Shep Gordon, Alan Stroll, and Danny Marcus. Lo and behold, we started representing Teddy Pendergrass and Rick James. And so I booked Rick James's first tour. Rick would never play clubs or theaters. He went out and played arenas. And we hired this kid from Minneapolis to be the opening act, and his name was Prince. So that was my first major arena tour. And nobody knew who Prince was. He just had a record that was coming out. I think it was called I Want to Be Your Lover. And I remember...
Rick James and Prince, that's a great show.
That was killer. And Rick was, I think on his second album was called Bustin' Out L7. Dates went on sale and they all did great. And I remember going back and seeing my friends and they said, oh, how's that Rick James show? I go, Rick's good, but you got to check out this guy Prince. And I watched him get better and better and better on the tour. And And he was more of a rock band back then. He wasn't what he evolved into, but where he started was a little bit different. But great on stage and very shy. I remember when I met him, he didn't talk to anybody when he was nobody. So he never changed. He always stayed the same. And then, working with Teddy Pendergrass, who at that moment was, just one of the greatest artists out there and the nicest guy. I mean, was so nice to me as a young agent. I remember I was in Detroit. And he was doing women-only concerts. I mean, think about that. I mean, today
it's such a Shep idea.
Well, yeah, and Shep was, and it's in Supermensch, and I really didn't get a chance to work day to day with Shep, but I worked with Alan Stroll and Danny, and a live management was always like one step ahead of everybody as far as I was concerned. And Shep was very, very smart to take Teddy's show and bring in a guy like Joe Layton, who did the lighting, who was a Broadway.
Creates a spectacular.
Yeah. That show was representative of that. So when Teddy walked on stage, everybody was like, wow. But on and off stage, it was so nice to me. I think it was Detroit where I was standing in the lobby trying to get a cab, and he came down. And he said, oh, hey, man, I didn't know you were going to be here. And I said, no, I came in to catch the gig. And he said, well, you trying to get a cab? He goes, get in the car with me, man. And he goes, what are you doing tonight after show? I'm not doing anything. Well, come to dinner with us, And he was just that guy, and I always appreciated his kindness. And I remember I booked him those big Budweiser festivals. They were playing like Giant Stadium and that kind of stuff, right? And I remember standing on the side of the stage and
like the first version of American Festivals, pretty much.
Yeah. And I remember Teddy was closing the show, and he's out there doing what he's doing. And he walks off stage, and there's all these other people that are far more important than me. And I just remember he came over to me and he goes, "How you been?" I go, "Great." He goes, "Listen, are you going to be hanging around a while?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "All right, I'm going to go back out and do a couple numbers, and let's go back to the dressing room and hang out." I go, "Okay." And as a young agent,
how cool does that make you feel?
Yeah, exactly. So when he died, I was so, obviously bummed out about his accident, and it was just horrible what happened to him. But I sent this letter to his wife and his mom, and I remember I was told that they read it at the funeral, and I said that your son treated me like I was somebody when I was nobody, and I never forgot his kindness, and what a fantastic artist he was. And now what's happening is the BBC did a whole documentary on him that was on Showtime, and our client, Tyrese Gibson, is optioned the story, sold it to Warner Brothers, and he's going to play Teddy Pendergrass and do the movie.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, so it's kind of goes around full circle.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
I want to ask you about career longevity and what advice you can give to some of the younger people coming up in the businesses. Your career span has been so consistent and amazing. Like, everybody has their moments with big, huge acts for a second, but your career has been consistent, and you're always working, and you've kept acts who have been super loyal to you, and you've grown your business amazingly. What advice can you give?
Well, for me personally, I realized that as an agent, when I was bringing in the most money to the company, I realized that the company wasn't doing as well as it should. And so maybe my specialty or my gift was backing away from that and trying to run the company and not trying to be the best agent. I think part of the problem today that I see with a lot of our younger associates is patience. They don't want to pay their dues. And this is a business where I don't care that you went to Princeton. I don't care that you went to MIT or Wharton or whatever. I don't care if you went to UCLA or Ocean County College. I really don't care. What I do care is that when you come into our company, that you work your ass off and you try to learn the craft. And this is the word, craft, of being an agent. You can't get this out of a book. You can't graduate with a degree in being an agent. And it's a specialty. And somebody said to me, what do I got to do? And I said, ask questions. Most of the time, nobody's asking the agent how he got there. Andy Summers they'll sit down with you all night and tell you their journey. And you'll learn a lot from that. And you also learn a lot by asking questions every day. And what I find is sometimes a younger agent, he thinks he knows it all. Okay, that's fine. But then he'll get in trouble and he's afraid to put up the yellow flag and go, how do I handle this? And I've often said, listen, you're not going to learn this in a year. You're not going to learn in 2 years. I'm still learning. We're all still learning. You have to have the patience and willing to put in the time to get there. There is no quick fix for this. There is no shortcut. You have to work at your craft. And if you're not willing to do it, don't do it. Do something else. This takes time. I had a young kid come in, and, the kids in the mailroom all wear suits and stuff because of the other aspects of the agency. Certainly, they don't do that on the music side. But one kid came into my office, and I'm putting stuff in my briefcase, and he said, can I talk to you a minute? I said, sure. And he's got a nice suit on. He's pushing a mail cart. And he said, well, I've got some questions for you. I said, well, let me ask you something. What did you do today? Oh, I worked on a television desk where they do packaging. And boy, did I learn a lot. That was just great, listening to those conversations and all that. I go, did you ask questions? He goes, no, I should have. I didn't. I said, well, you should. I said, you got to ask. Just ask. They'll tell you. And he said, well, I got a couple questions for you. How much longer do I have to do this mailroom thing? I said, how long you been here? He goes, 3 weeks. I said, wow, a whole 3 weeks. I said, well, let me tell you something. What's your name? Okay, after tonight, a lot longer. How about that? They don't want to put the time in. Those that do, those that come down the hall and ask you questions all the time, those are the ones that are going to succeed. Those are the ones
he could pretty much have asked you any other question in the world that wouldn't have pissed you off.
Yeah, that one question.
That one kind of rips the Band-Aid off the bat.
And that person didn't stay with us much longer after that anyway.
Well, you
and that's
knew
fine.
it though, right?
Yeah,
when they ask that question,
he's out. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, what do you want to be president? But when you see the younger associates covering shows, one thing I said to everybody, they were covering a show one night. I was out and I introduced them to everybody I knew and did all that. But the next day, I called them in my office and I said, all the people were at the show, and they were thinking, are we in trouble? And they're sitting there. So I said, all right, last night we covered the show. We were all in the green room. It was a little bit different than most, where we were able to see the artist and talk to the manager and the road manager, everybody prior to the show. And I'm glad that everybody stayed for the show. Number one, that's the most important thing. Watch the artist, know what they do. I constantly preach that. But how could we have covered that better? How could we have done a better job? And they all looked at me, and I said, let me tell you what you're doing. You were off in a corner, 3 or 4 of you, texting. You weren't engaging with the artist. You weren't engaging with the manager. You weren't introducing yourself to the road manager.
They missed the opportunity.
I had to drag you over and introduce you. And once I did, you did. You're not there to talk to the people in the office. You're there to meet people. You're there to make contacts. You're there to expand your horizons. That's how we cover dates. And it's an art. And if you come with me, I will never introduce you as an assistant. I'll always introduce you as my associate. They won't know whether you're an agent or you're not. They'll think you're important if I'm talking about you as if you're important. So come to shows. That's how you learn. You're not going to learn by texting people. That's not the only way. That's a great tool, but don't lose that personal contact and stick your hand out there, which, by the way, is the hardest thing in the world for somebody coming into or just going through any business, introducing yourself.
Especially to a celebrity.
I was the shyest guy at the company. I couldn't even speak in front of people. I would agonize over it. And finally, I just got to the point where I went, okay, it's showtime. I got to do it. I just got to do it.
You got to force yourself.
You got to force yourself.
And then you get over it.
And you realize there are people too.
I've noticed that your company as a team is good at that. I think I was at Brian Wilson at the Pantages, you and Andy and Bruce and maybe 7 or 8 other agents were all at the show. And I was really impressed with how many people were there to represent APA in LA. And it was a very cool thing.
I think it's important to see the artists perform. It's not enough just to negotiate their deals. You really got to get out there and connect with them. And you also got to watch the show. I can't tell you how many agents, hopefully not at our company, but they cover the lobby brilliantly. They go to dinner and they don't watch the show, and then they come back after. And if I catch somebody doing that, they know that they're dead. I mean, it's going to be hell. If all I have to ask you to do is cover a show that anybody in the world would cut their arm off just to be there, and I've got to ask you to do that, you're in the wrong business. You should go sell shoes. Go do something else. This isn't it for you. If I got to beg you to go cover a date, you're not for APA, and you shouldn't be working for us. And you shouldn't be doing this. If you're not a fan of talent, go do something else. It's okay. This isn't for everybody. If all we're asking is for you to watch the show, how painful is that?
It's funny because as a promoter, I've seen the start of so many great shows, but at some point you got to go settle. And it's the most painful thing in the world that you're into the show and you don't want to leave, but you got to go do your job.
You got to go do your job.
That's what I'm there for.
And that's fine.
But I'm on the other side of that where it's like all I want to do is see the rest of the show. And it's just the hardest thing, especially because it's always the best shows that you got to go settle. The idea of somebody not wanting to see it when it's like all I want to do, because all the best songs are at the end.
Right. I just feel that, and again, that's the way I was taught. I mean, early on in APA, I started there in 1981, and when I got to that company, I just thought, I'm a lucky kid from New Jersey that somebody lets me play in the sandbox. And I was introduced to Broadway. I was introduced to other aspects of the business, and I was a sponge, and I would ask a million questions. And then when it was cold and rainy night in March, they said, would you ever move to L.A.? And I said, I'd leave tonight. And even though I loved the guy I was working for, Roger Vorse, who hired me, he was just an incredible agent. I mean, just really, really great. And he didn't really want to let me go, but he did. But then the first day I got to L.A., the guy running a talent department, John Gaines, is a really good agent, grabbed me by the back of the neck and said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to lunch with the music guys. He goes, no, you're not. You're going to be in the talent meeting. I said, John, I'm in the music department. He goes, you're in Hollywood. Learn the fucking business.
Jim, I can't thank you enough for spending this hour with me. It's one of the most entertaining and educational interviews that I've ever had the ability to sit in, and I'm fascinated with it. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me and allowing me to share my journey, and I hope it helps clear the path for some of our younger people trying to get in this business.
So very honored to have spent this time with Jim. He's so forthcoming, so honest, so educational. He's just a next level mind at work, Luke.
This is Brain Roundtree. I work at WME, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Quote of the week comes to us from Franklin D. Roosevelt. I think he was in politics or something, Luke. When you reach the end of your rope, tie a knot in it and hang on. Good advice from the former president. Did you know he's not the current president, Luke? Did you know that?
I did know that he's not the current president, Dan.
Hello, this is Dan Berkowitz from CID Entertainment and CID Presents, and I am here on Promoter 101.
Let's wrap it up. That'll do it, guys. That's the end of episode 150 of Promoter 101. Thank you so much for tuning in to our loyal listeners out there. If you like what you heard today, send us a note. We want to hear your feedback. We want to know what you thought. Hit us at steiny@promoter101.net. And of course, we've got to give such a special thanks to our amazing guest this week, the president of APA, Jim Gosnell, for a wonderful interview with Dan, and from ToneDen, Tommy Knecht, for coming on the podcast and playing our game of 3 questions with us. Thank you so much.
We'll be back on Thursday at 5 p.m., 8 p.m. on the Eastern Coast. And Greenwich Mean Time, that'll be midnight. Hey, episode 150. Luke, I never would have thought we would have been here this far down, but holy shit, 150. How many of these things can we get out there in the world? Jesus.
Well, at least 151, because we're going to see you on Thursday in an interview that features Portland's Mississippi Studios talent buyer, Matt King.
Until then, we're wishing you sold out shows for the week to come.
Cheers. Call your mother.
This is Andy Levitt with Live Nation Comedy. You're listening to Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba.